kind of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Court Live, Global Pro's deep dive into relevant business and insurance topics, providing actionable takeaways and valuable insights. We aim to update, educate, and inform you weekly. I'm Dan Odess, president of Global Pro, where we manage risk to recovery. For more than a decade, we have represented thousands of businesses and community associations in the placement of insurance and the recovery from over $1 billion in damages. We are your insurance news you can use. Since 2012, Global Pro has served the interest of policyholders. We are your advocate when you are placing insurance through the recovery from loss. In recent years, we have seen a dramatic uptick in the number and size of disasters that have occurred around the world. But not all things are contributable to environmental changes, and many were simply caused by negligence. Like the recent explosion in Beirut, our thoughts and prayers are with the community rocked by the sudden loss and life of property. Here in the U.S., the second Atlantic storm made landfall, Hurricane Isaias, which caused devastation throughout the East Coast and Caribbean. While it's the second to make landfall, it was the 9th storm of the season. The storm's impact areas that haven't even experienced anything quite like it in modern history. Another reminder to practice preparedness. At the storm's peak, it was a Cat 1, but toggled up and down and traveled an extraordinary amount of miles. At one point, Hurricane Isaias set a record for the largest tropical storm force wind field. However, the devastation it left in its wake was just as impressive. It made landfall as a hurricane Monday night near Ocean Isles Beach, North Carolina, but was downgraded to a tropical storm Thursday as it headed into Canada. Isaias had sustained previous top winds of up to 65 miles per hour for more than 18 hours. Millions of people across several states were still without power. Wednesday, about 3.7 million customers still didn't have power. So the question is, what are we to expect as we move into the next phase of the hurricane season? And many are predicting that there is going to be a massive uptick, and predictions have risen. Colorado State University forecasts that up to 25 named storms for this season will occur, which includes the 9 storms that have already formed. And the 5 hurricanes are forecasted to reach major hurricane strength, category 3, 4, and 5, with a 74% chance of making landfall in the United States. But something important to note about Hurricane Isaias, like with many other storms in its past, although it didn't make landfall in certain areas, or that the winds went up and down, went from tropical storm to hurricane force, at times we find insurance companies act as if the storm never even occurred. So just as important as it is for you to collect information regarding your damages, make sure you're collecting relevant information about your community and the damages it sustained in your local areas, because it will just be as important as the actual damages itself. So get the information you need and stay vigilant in your preparations. I want to bring on a guest that knows a lot about managing tough situations and proper preparation. Bruce is the Vice President of the Southeast Region for KW Management and Consulting. He has an extensive construction background and leads a team of 9 district managers and a workforce of over 400 employees. Bruce plays a pivotal role in KW's continuing education program. Bruce and I have had the opportunity to talk several times on and off about the challenges and successes of 2020. So I'm excited to have you with us today, Bruce. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Dan, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and hopefully we could pass along some insight to all of the viewers today.
Fantastic. Bruce, it's been a few weeks since we last spoke. So how did your team, given the disaster that we've just, we had the pandemic, we've had many different things that have occurred. We see a massive explosion in Beirut. How is your team weathering these storms and these issues as they come about?
A+++, Dan. I could tell you that our team just, went up and beyond, typical of our great values of our team of making sure that we deliver a service to our client. By the end of the storm, or the storm that didn't come to us, and thankfully it didn't come to us as bad as other areas. We know having some rain and some wind here. I think our team was a little weary. I mean, with having the pandemic, these are unprecedented times of not knowing, what to do, in those cases of trying to make preparations of saying, oh my Lord, do I have enough masks in my supply box? Do I have enough PPE things? And reminding themselves that, wow, there is a different element that I have to prepare for. But I think it really showed the diligence, the vigor of our teams that are out there at all of our properties throughout the state of Florida and North Carolina, that we were extremely proud about.
Of the many challenges in 2020, and I've talked a lot about that, again, on and off. And with like most economic downturns, it's shaping up to be particularly hard on the construction industry, as we've seen with most cycles. You have a deep background in this field, so I want to kind of lean on that a little bit. Having worked for a huge construction firm, very similar to myself, built an enormous amount of homes at one point, and watched as the last economic downturn absolutely devastated that industry. What challenges are you seeing facing new project starts and community association turnovers?
I don't think anything right now is stopped. I think that when you're dealing with existing associations, they're getting through all the projects that they have already committed to at this point. Obviously, having the pandemic has made them, reconsider some of the very larger projects that they're doing, and maybe just taking on some smaller ones. I think there's a mindset within, boards that are out there, current boards that are out there, and also developers to try to get a pulse of the economy of what's going out there. But from an existing standpoint of boards, they're on a wait and see. Let's see how we get through, the end of the year. I mean, this is budget time for associations right now. So I think they're being, and what I see is they're being a little bit more conservative on the projects that they're going to consider for 2021.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of actually sitting in a couple board meetings via Zoom, and they were talking about these proposed construction projects. And the more I am involved in these meetings, and the more I hear about what was planned versus what they're actually doing, it's remarkable how they're making decisions, and not really sure when is the right time to do it. I guess is a bit of a trouble, especially for boards that come under fire from unit owners that are expecting change and are leaning on them, pushing on them for that. And both of us came with a very similar background, worked for big construction companies, doing a lot of home building and whatnot in the past. I left that industry thankfully shortly before the crash. But what did you learn, I guess, from that last cycle, and how are you applying that to I guess KEW's management style in the Southeast region?
We were a very strong industry. Being in the property management industry, we have not had downtime. Being an essential, company, or have essential employees, we have not had any time to rest. Actually, our teams have been working harder, and so forth. So what we've learned is that making sure that we have checks and balances, making sure that we take care of the most important people, of our employees. They're the faces of our companies, making sure that they and their families are good. During the turndown, I too came out of that time frame and got into property management. You saw that for a while. This just came at us. So it was something, as you know, in the downturn, you were able to prepare. You saw it start ticking down and so forth. And a lot of developers, of course, closed their doors and so forth. A lot of them banked their land and did what they needed to do to be able to get up when this whole thing was over and then start building again. In this business, it hasn't affected us, and that's the difference. But you learn some, how can you say, you get wiser in your day through your experiences. You don't want to repeat the experiences you have. So So we've been blessed, Dan. We've been really blessed, but we watch our employees on a daily basis. We make sure that they're well. We make sure they're wearing their PPE, equipment and so forth to make sure that they're good to go, that there's no burnout. We are able to talk to our boards in regards to, I have to tell you, the majority of our boards have been awesome. You really see the humanistic side of these boards now, how they've come out. There's, wanting to make sure that everyone is safe, wanting to make sure that they have enough money to pay and go through that route. The marketplace, so you understand also, is we haven't seen a real downtick of people not paying their maintenance money either. So that's been a good thing. There is some hardship out there. I think I mentioned on one of our conversations, we did some great things when this started of securing, because we knew that associations weren't going to qualify for any government money, from that end, because they were under a management company scenario here. But we went out and secured lines of credits for our associations. We did some awesome things that right now I think boards have taken a deep breath through this time and said, maybe we can do that project. Now that we've got this, and the rates are phenomenal right now. And I encourage anyone out there, maybe this is the time for you to do a project because money's cheap out there. But, very, very proud. What's that?
If you can swing it, right?
And you could swing it, exactly. And the last thing I could tell you is that most associations is during this budget time are being very conscientious about raising fees. They're being very, conservative the way that they're moving through, as I said, through 2021, ending through 2020, trying to end up on a high note, trying to make sure that they end up even or somewhat in a better position so that 2021, they can I think it's going to be more flat in 2021 for associations.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit on a couple really important points. The demand for your services, very much like ours. You see the service industries for these major associations has certainly been up. Whether it's being there and that burnout is obviously something we talk about it here all the time. Making sure that you do take a break, because sometimes you get stuck behind your desk for so many hours and you're doing so many Zoom calls or taking so many phone calls. You're used to walking the property, and sometimes if you're off site, you don't get that opportunity to walk the property and do your regular routine, things like that. You've got to adjust to it and almost rely on other people to do it that are out there doing it for you. I think that's a really good point, is just to create some balance. And I think it's great advice and clearly something that you and your team are doing and doing well. Unlike some others that we see out there who kind of struggle through it, a lot of friction, a lot of frustration, and a bunch of turnover. In an economy or in a market where are you going to go? And people can kind of feel stuck. So being able to reach out, work with them, and making sure that they have the resources they need at their disposal and that they're taking a step away so that you don't reach that burnout point is really important. You made a comment about delinquencies. There's just been a lot of hype around it. And it was something I wanted to talk with you about, because I've heard, mixed messages from people in the management industry with community associations as it relates to when to expect it or if it's ever going to occur. Are you expecting an uptick in delinquencies, and what advice are you giving associations to prepare for the potential for a major increase in those delinquencies if one is ever even going to occur?
I mean, one of the nice things about KW Property Management is that we were established by accountants. Accountants are, smart people in a sense. They're all about numbers. They're all about benchmarking and so forth. So we've done a lot of benchmarking through this period of time of COVID and so forth, and moving ourselves to understand where our communities are and the types of communities. Being a condo and an HOA could be very, very different in a co-op and so forth. So being able to benchmark this on a monthly basis and be able to send different types of reports to our boards so that they can understand has helped us greatly and really understand the market. Again, we don't see much tick up, in that in that delinquency. We know that from factual numbers that are out there. I mean, when people talk about, oh, it's going to go up, you really need to understand the marketplace. You need to you need to have something to analyze, and we have that ability to analyze as a company, which has been great for our clients. And I really suggest that to any association that's out there. You know, when you're a self-managed association, it's a little different. You know, you've got to monitor yourself and so forth. That's, you know, the value of going to someone like a KW Property Management and being able to do that. So I could tell you that we don't see that. The other thing is that there are some older communities where, you know, you've got to be some, you know, sensitive, and some people that, when I say that, they're on fixed incomes, they're on things of that nature. We don't have a lot of those. We have a lot of individuals that live in those communities, but they have means and so forth. So we're very happy to say that it really hasn't affected our communities. It's been very, if you want to say, it's like a trickling effect, and that's been really good for these associations. They're the ones that are able to take a deep breath and breathe. Everyone was like really worried, like, oh my God, this is really going to affect us. How are we going to get around this? Are we going to have to lay people off? Are we going to have to do things of that nature? So I think that there was a sense of relief from our associations, in a sense, and also being able to track it, as I said, has been very, very helpful for them as well.
I think one of the things that I think people need to be understanding of too is that we're in a very transient community, that prior to I would say the pandemic taking hold, we would naturally see in certain certain times during the season, we see a large influx of people coming down here. Because of the pandemic, you saw that early exodus from New York down the South Florida region, and they're still reporting that people are still coming down this way, helping fill these buildings and make this into their primary residence too. And I think that's another indicator that is as to why maybe we're not seeing those delinquencies. Who knows? It's all speculative. But thankfully, most of the people in the management industry that I talk to, like yourself, are reporting that they're not seeing a significant uptick in those delinquencies, which is helping them plan for the future. And I want to transition a little bit into that planning for the future, keeping in mind that analysts are projecting that there will be delinquencies and there will be a rise in some constraints regarding financials, and that could make a direct impact on these associations. How is that going to, you mentioned budget season. Is budget season planning for projects, as you're always doing something in these buildings, and I know you and I have talked about it before, it's just there's always a project. It just depends on the scale of it. Are these, as far as the construction planning for the projects that are coming up, for whether it's improvements or maintenance of those things, are we planning at it as if it was a normal, typical market and then a contingency plan, or is it straight contingency plan that we're forecasting that something's happening? And how are you working through those difficulties?
As I said, Dan, I believe that these associations are acting on, being more on the cautious and the conservative side.
Yep.
I feel that they are looking at their budgets and saying, to next year, let's not take a big giant step. Instead of doing this big overhaul of the lobby, maybe we're just going to throw some paint on it just to make it look good. Put some lipstick on a pig, if you want to say, just so that it looks good, so that everything looks good from that end. And let's see how 2022 goes from that end. I also think that good budgeting is going to play a good part in this process. And by good budgeting, that means good managers are going to go out, go to their vendors. Everybody's in the same boat. Make sure they either solidify better pricing or stabilize their pricing for the year. Go ahead and see where they can cut some things, some corners. Look, electricity in buildings have gone up dramatically. If you plan, whatever you plan for 2020, that just went out the window because people are home. So
Yeah.
there's a whole different things of, that whole, scenario of looking at, electric, where you were able to kind of stabilize, and electric was on the downfall, then it went up. depending on, how well you understood and were tracking in the last 5 years. But electric's going to be up next year. So you've got to take that into consideration, and maybe some other things are going to be down, for next year. So you're going to have to weigh it, and you're going to have to really, sink your teeth, put, pencil to paper during this time frame, so that, each association is going to come out not feeling pain, or maybe feel just better about themselves going into 2022.
A great point you just brought up about the electrical. Early on in the pandemic, it was an obvious issue, which was that people are going to be in their residence much longer than they typically otherwise would be. And these buildings, these systems are going to be stressed even further. We just saw a recent article that just got published. It's going to be in the newsletter that we send out every Monday morning in this latest edition to highlight this, where associations are reporting, or building facility managers are reporting more use of these utilities, and they're starting to plan for potential failures or issues that may occur with those equipment, and how are we going to budget and manage those issues that may occur from that. So I think you guys do, and I know KW does a phenomenal job as it relates to budgeting and planning. That's really certainly a KW forte. So it's something, it's great to have you on to talk about those issues and how you guys are forecasting the management of and the use of the systems, and how that trickles down to the economics, and what it means to the budgets, and something like electrical and it going up, water and other utilities and other systems. The ACs are running longer and harder, especially with the incremental weather that we're having. The hurricane brought a little relief just because it was breezy, but it certainly didn't make it any cooler around here. In fact, every morning I wake up and you walk outside and you just want to get that fresh air, and it's 100% humidity again. So, but it's awesome to hear you guys. And building on that, something that we saw a lot after the last downturn was a major upping in construction litigation and defect related issues. And I know that KW manages quite a few new buildings as they turn over and have to go through this process of that construction litigation. And what is in light of what we dealt with, let's say, from the last downturn, and setting aside the delinquencies and the things that the established buildings with their budgets and economics they have already in place, and for a new building coming online that is considering construction litigation, and leaning on your experience from the last downturn, how do you plan for taking on a task or taking on an issue like that in the current economic environment?
I just wanted to go back when you did your intro. I could tell you my nerves just went up, and I just got all crazy because you said 25 storms, and all of a sudden my level of anxiety went out the window. So I just wanted you to know that storms are not good for us.
No.
Look, statute is very, very clear in regards to construction litigation 558s that are out there. The buildings that we have that have turned over now, and I actually have a couple, full throttle with we're pedal to the floor with moving forward with those 558 litigations and so forth. Engineers, attorneys. We were very lucky. The last program that I appeared with many months ago was with Gary Moores of Siegfried Rivera, and we talked a little bit about that from that end. But full throttle to the floor, 558s are going. You've got to stay within that statute of limitation, that's requiring you to do that. I don't see any downticks in any of that. Do I see that some of these buildings are being built a little better and less construction and so forth? Well, it all depends on the developer. It depends on the contractor and so forth. I hope developers continue with their plan and not cut corners to save dollars in this time frame, because I hope they realize that if you start doing certain things, it's going to cost you more in the long run. You don't want to do that as a developer. I always can tell you when I worked for, back in the development days, we try to, stay straight with all of the things that we planned so that we didn't get into a warranty or any of those type of issues. And that's something to watch. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's a common practice out there when money gets tight. And I just hope that it doesn't happen. We won't know that. The developers that we've worked with have been pretty good, actually. They've been, the products that they've been delivering to the marketplace have been pretty good. But of course, there's always things that an engineer is going to find in a 558.
Yeah, certainly. There's always issues there. And the point I bring up is, the reason why I bring this point up is that after the last downturn, we did see a major uptick in that construction litigation because of a lot of things you saw. The value engineering, the cutting of the corners, the inferior materials started to be used. There was just a lot of debate over, what was supposed to be delivered versus what we actually got, and how was that managed. And the cost of litigation obviously is an extremely burdensome to an association when it comes to those budgets and planning. So something certainly for our associations to watch out for, to plan for, to consider, and make sure that you reach out to resources to look at alternative ways to resolving those. And we've been able to do a lot of that in working with associations to take claims out of litigation and put them through a claims process rather than into the years of it. So we offer that alternative opportunity to avoid the typical and sometimes unnecessary expenses associated with a 558. But there's no telling what's going to happen. Bruce, it's been awesome to have you on. Again, you're always full of insight. I always learn something new from you. So I am, and I don't say that facetiously or sarcastically. I honestly do. You have an amazing background. KW does an incredible job managing its properties. Again, thank you to Bruce, all of our attendees that tuned in this week. Go online to getglobalpro.com. Check out our website. Click the resource section to download the information that you can use when you experience either a disaster or if you're placing insurance. We're here to help you through all phases of the process. Be sure to check out your YouTube channel to watch today's broadcast. Like us, follow us, engage us on all of our social media platforms. We'd love to connect with our clients and our community. So call us anytime at 855-487-7475 or shoot us an email at recover@getglobalpro.com. Again, thank you, Bruce, and all of our attendees for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live.